my friends, catch and release, right? Catch and release. Catch and kill. Right. Catch and release is something we're quite familiar with. It's kind of a fishing thing, right? This catch and kill is the scheme, quote scheme, supposedly, that Trump's associates were able to pull off in order to quelch, to hush some derogatory and or morally ethical and morally questionable behavior on the part of Trump, and in order to protect his run for the White House in 2016, to keep it from messing with what's going on right now. All that said, I'm sitting here putting together some stuff for the primary channel that I prefer to spend most of my time doing. There's a lot of interesting topics that I can't cover in my other channel, which is why I got this channel here, and some of them a bit more hot-blooded topics than others. And it's hard sometimes to divorce yourself from how things affect you personally and how your opinions on them are. It's otherwise, that's being human. That's being a human being. But it's still appropriate that a big fantasy, science fiction, role-playing, wargaming kind of guy, ever since I was a child, this has been my main primary hobby for 50 damn years, or damn close, 48 years would be about right. And that said, I have ran them. I have spent a long time working on my own would-be game. I have tried to write novels. I have done a slew of things, including be the dungeon master, the game coordinator for hundreds of people in my lifetime. And I've sat at the table and played those same games quite a bit. That said, I know the difference between pure fantasy, pure theater of the imagination, theater of the mind, and reality in the real world. Unfortunately, there's a whole slew of people out there who struggle with that concept. And there's a certain ethnic portion of America that's really hardcore wired for this kind of material. I cannot tell you how many members of my extended family who've spent what little reading they do. They choose not to read, and because they can't be bothered by it or whatever. You get you? Oh, okay, Missy. So what are you doing with the chair? All right, got Missy down here tearing up the chair. They can't be bothered to read anything unless it's absolutely forced on them. And even then, they grunt and groan about it. Now, some of them, which is ironic, because a lot of them are very Christian-minded and have read the Bible. Although I have to point out that I think a lot of them, too, don't read the Bible like they say they do. I have too many relatives who claim to read the Bible on a regular basis, and they may glance at the Bible occasionally to look up a few things occasionally. I do that, but to sit there and say they sit there and read it every week, every day, every night is bullshit in most situations. Anyway, these people, including my dad, who, like I said, he was a Marine Corps veteran, veteran of the Korea War, Marine Corps veteran, was in the Marines for a long time, and then worked for 30 years for what's now called Bridgestone Firestone. It was just Firestone back in the day. Matter of fact, it's literally right over across the street from where I live. This is the factory. He never read that much for fun. I never seen my dad read novels I saw my dad read a lot of manuals for technical stuff like radio manuals and clocks and histories on clocks and radios because that was his hobby. His big hobby was collecting antique clocks and radios, and he had he was an aficionado of it. And so that if he went over to his corner, his boxes were full of magazines from audio labs and things like this, popular mechanics, popular science. Dad did read some popular science. And it was because of Dad getting popular science that I read popular science as a young man. And it was such a fertile ground for imagination, especially for somebody who was so interested in the fictional fantasy worlds of our own creation. So when I hear stuff like the players that are going on around some of the hush trial, the hush money trial that's going on around Trump right now, you know, Mr. Pecker, honest to God, I did not know that the head dude over at the National Choir, his last name is Mr. Pecker. One almost has to wonder if, by dumb chance or intelligent design, did Mr. Pecker change his name? Did he change the spelling of his name? I'm not willing to really go down that rabbit hole enough to care right now. I have no reason. But he's a pretty jovial fellow, pretty happy to be there in court, happy to share his stories. Seems to really, really like his buddy, his friend, Donald Trump. Which reminded me a little bit of that Australian billionaire buddy of the friend of the the ex-president, who it is reported that Mr. Trump, while he was no longer the president, showed this fella some secret documents related to the American naval submarine program because he was interested. His company did something with building, working, or maintaining submarines or something. So, but he was awful jovial and happy to be around and was happy to share his experience. It's almost like Mr. Hankey doesn't understand that the very thing he's saying is going to fry his friend. The good chance that his friend's going to go to prison. And reason part is because his friends are screwing him over. And they're pleased to do so. They are happy to do so. This guy literally just seems to be happy as a clam to be there, which is odd. I don't know very many people who are really truly happy to be in a courtroom, except maybe the handful of people who have worked there and that's their career. And they chose that as opposed to their job, and they just go there every day. But you have to go, And if that's not enough, Mr. Packer, well, one of Donald's other friends is a Mr. Hankey. Hankey as in hanky panky. There's a whole slew of bad jokes there for anybody who wants to try to get in on that. You go ahead and go down that avenue and see where it takes you, because there's a whole lot of bad jokes there. Hankey and Packer. So Mr. Hankey, using some very questionable methods and some pretty creative bookkeeping by the sounds of it, is trying to help out his friend Donald by helping him come up with the $175 million he needs to have his second day in court when it got to do with the tax problems or tax fraud or the whatever it was, almost $500 million that he's in Dutch for. Mr. Hankey and Mr. Pecker. Seriously, this is going to be fodder for so long, for so many people, I don't even begin to understand. But going back to what I said, I fully understand that this is a game, that none of this is real, and the reality and the truth is, if this was a real reality, it would be horrific. I mean, I'm just saying, it is a game. It's just like whenever you sit down and you play a game of Monopoly, you're not actually participating in some kind of Ponzi scheme to gain all control of all the damn real estate. We're just pointing out, we know the difference. There's a whole lot of Americans who don't. In part because their only source of news comes from sources like this. Now, they say that the regular subscriptions or sales for the National Choir are quite low now. It's in the couple 100,000 range, just over 200,000, I understand. That's way down, because if you go back to the 80s, man, it seemed like everybody bought this crap. They're in all the book. You go to any grocery store and they're right there in the checkout line. You cannot not pass on them. So when they concocted this claim, or the Mr. Pecker says that we come across this idea. I'm going to call it a scheme or plan, like if they were trying to intentionally, maliciously defraud and defame or cover up something shisty. No, we just come up with this idea. The ladies who want some money, we give them some money. They get paid for their story. Nobody hears the story. They can't complain because they signed paperwork saying, agreeing that there's no they cannot republish this anywhere else. So Mr. Pecker proposes to buy these stories outright, and then he makes it kind of a carte blanche, jovial thing on the witness stand about how this is not a usual practice. That this is not it is very uncommon practice because we've never done it before. No. Like I said, I've been exposed to the National Choir, the Sun and the Star, a big chunk of my young life. They were almost always, every Friday, Dad would pick up the National Choir, and sometimes the Sun, sometimes the Star, depending on what cover art. We've uncovered that the real value for the National Choir today is that cover. So even they are well aware that whatever they put on that cover is going to get seen by tens of millions of Americans. Whether or not the Americans buy them or not, typical of most Americans, while standing in line at the cashier to get out, you become a little bored. So you look at all the point of sale material that's in front of you, which is the whole point of point of sale. All the little tchotchkes and gum and candy bars and soda pop. It's all there for that, last minute crap. That looks good. Let me get that. Or I want something to snack on the way home. I didn't realize I was hangry. So let me get something. But that's the whole point of the point of sale. So the scandal rags, which is what these damn things are. And they've acknowledged over and over and over again in many, many court battles that they're bullshit, and a lot of their stuff is spun up or elaborated to make them sound even more fantastic than whatever it was. So they take a tiny kernel of some truth and then explode it up into something that it's not. And so we get into that real world scenario of a whole slew of older Americans that absolutely believe the bullshit that they're reading in these magazines such as National Enquirer, because they don't bother they're not going to read the New York Times. They're lucky if they read the local newspaper when we had no local newspapers. Now that we don't have, most of the local newspapers are garbage or not worth having. I used to have a subscription to the Sunday paper, and it cost me twice as much money to have 4 copies delivered to my house than it was going to cost me to just walk a block over the street to the next block over to where there's a convenience store and buy it there off the shelf. Once I realized I'm paying twice as much for the home delivery, I canceled the service, and they threw a fit. They called me, some actually came by the house, other people called me. They were doing everything they level could to get me to come back. And when I confronted them on all that, I said, no offense, man, but you're charging twice as much just for the home delivery as what I can go to the store and get it. How is that convenient? Right? Anyway, whole slew of damn Americans got a lot of their information from these kind of sources. And what has Fox News become but a different version of politically driven, Republican, MAGA right dominated, politically driven gossip rag. When they're willing to twist and spin the truth regularly, they are no longer a legitimate frontline news source. The problem is 30-odd% of Americans do not know this. They cannot get their heads around that. They cannot willingly agree that the only sources of news they're getting from is from the spin artists who will lie to them and cheat them at every opportunity for profit, right? So he calls this catch and kill. How many? And Mr. Pecker goes, oh, well, this was just a rare thing, which is bad for Trump. That's even worse because it shows that there was obvious intent for political gain here, not personal gain. Mr. Hankey wasn't doing it to save his buddy some embarrassment. He wouldn't have done that on a normal day. And then there was some possibilities there that he wasn't going to do it at all when the check didn't show up. We were supposed to pay for it. Because we all know that Donald is very bad about paying his bills, and that yet another meme that we can now attribute to this walking bag of memes that is the former president, because you get what he is what he is. You get what you see, what's there. So So Mr. Hankey goes out and says, oh, this has never been done before. Bullshit. I call bullshit. Historically speaking, that is such a load of BS. We could fill, a whole slew of frickin' container ships full of it, and still probably have more than enough to ship over to see us to another, for another round of container ships. The reason I say that is because people have been buying out people's forever. That is human nature. It goes on a hell of a lot more than what you and I believe or want to believe. And our legal system knows this. The legal system knows that there's a whole hell of a lot that goes on. There are a lot of crimes that take place in this country by extremely wealthy people that never get reported, in part because of this philosophy, this thing. This is where they take their deep ass pockets and buy off whomever they offended somehow. And they can offend some people in some pretty horrific ways and still avoid court. What does that tell you? That this is not an uncommon event. That it is a far more common event than what we know. It's just like I think a lot of us suspect. I don't know that you can prove it. I'm sure, though, you could if you wanted to do all the math and numbers and kind of accumulate everything. Hi, Frankie. Yeah. You over here? Is little Missy still in here? Little Frankie? Yes, I don't see Missy. Is she here? Yeah? No? Okay. Little Frankie. So, you have to ask yourself, is it legitimate? I mean, I think it's that they actually pulled this on what they're saying is the prosecutors are saying is legitimate. I don't see how you can spin it up in either way. And then you have Mr. Hankey happy to explain the whole situation. He's happy to not go to prison himself. That's what that's about. He's happy to throw his friend Donald Trump under the bus because he knows Donald Trump's going to prison. He knows. Donald knows. Donald is starting to come around and really beginning to get into his head that this is a real thing. This is not something he's going to be able to buy and kill. This is not how America's supposed to work. Unfortunately, and it does work that way for a lot of people. And as historically speaking, this catch and kill thing has been on. This has gone on forever. Anytime for as many scandals. I mean, there are historical events in American politics that you can do some Google searches on and pop up other examples of this sort of behavior. So it's not unique to the President Trump campaign group or campaign in general. I still think it's a terrible thing. It's a very bad idea. It screws the people who need to tell the story. Now, grant you, there are some people that knowingly are telling that story looking to get paid. So, for example, the story going around about the doorman, and they paid the doorman off $30,000, so he wouldn't talk about the possibility of Trump's illegitimate son or child, if that's how that goes. So, what we don't know is whether or not the doorman was just looking to get a paycheck, which he's a doorman. Of course he's looking to get a paycheck, for God's sake. He's like everybody else. $30,000 is a lot of money. How would you put up? How would you, push off something like that? How would you avoid doing it? I don't get it. So if you got the opportunity and you got the greedy heart in you, I mean, there's a lot of us that probably wouldn't go there, even though we know damn well we could benefit from it. We just, for one reason or another, morally speaking, ethically speaking, cowardice, whatever you want to call it, we choose not to go that route. Uh, so they have this saying that here in Iowa that they bounce around a lot. The government does the 7 pillars of blah blah blah, 7 pillar, and honesty, integrity. Those are key components, and key components in both the social fabric that keeps our social society functioning, and our political, religious, and every other level of that society you choose to focus on. So when you cannot trust what anybody says, and you cannot trust the institutions that you originally thought were giving you honest and truthful facts, you're in a very dangerous place. We, as a country, are in a very dangerous place. There's doubly reasons for this sort of thing being called out and punished, because most of us couldn't do it. We don't have 30,000, 150,000 laying around. We can't work out a deal with a lawyer to silence somebody to keep ourselves from going to jail or something. Or everybody that goes to jail would find a way to do that, or half of them would anyway. You would have no moderately successful inmates in prison. And I hate to say this to you, or maybe I should tell you that there are actually quite a few independently wealthy and or moderately wealthy individuals sitting in prison, because as the Donald is learning slowly, this is a land of laws. You don't have to love or hate every bit of America to understand this is a land of laws, and the law will get you if you F up. And it's got a pretty good track record of not getting people that don't belong in prison. It happens. It happens. But percentages wise, it is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of things. Majority of people who do stupid crap get caught and go to prison for it, or get punished for it. And punishment can come in a lot of different ways. So, that's my thought on that. I think that we are at a pivotal point in history in America, because so many things could tilt the wrong way and go in such a spiral in such a negative way easily that it's spooky. It is spooky. And what's worse is that there's a large percentage, fortunately not a dominant percentage. Mega, hey mega, you ain't got the numbers, friends. You ain't ever gonna have the numbers. That goes for your wannabe Civil War too. You ain't got the numbers, and you ain't got the numbers of guns. You're gonna find that a whole lot of folk on the left got as many guns, if not more so, than a lot of you on the right. And in part for that is they got more money than the rednecks on the right do. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. You don't have to like it. You don't have to love it. Finally, I'm starting to see a couple religious pastors getting up and getting some FaceTime about calling out the travesty that this Christian national movement is doing to the Christian faith. Christian faith, Christianity. America was never intended to be a theocracy. Matter of fact, that was one of the core kernel discussions amongst the founding fathers in the days leading up to the actual formation of our Bill of Rights and the writing of the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights. All men are created equal under God. Does not mean all men under in America must be Christian. Does not say that at all. It just says under God. So whether it's your Muslim God, your Christian God, your Jewish God, or your elephant God, I don't care. America is, first and foremost, a land of the people, by the people, for the people. Not of the Christian people, for the Christian people, by the Christian people. Oh, and a few handful of others we tolerate. No, it doesn't work that way, and it's never going to work that way. If for whatever reason we have a theology rise up in this country's done. It will go through some terrible metamorphosis, and it won't be good for anybody. It could be actually the end of the world as we know it. This could literally be the end times because of our own creation. And keep that in the back of your mind. There are a handful of really devout nuts in the extreme Christian faith who would have absolutely no problem nuking most of the rest of the world, because in their idea that's the only way to save God. Which God, my friends, does not need saved. Here's a thought. This is something my grandfather used to preach about. God does not need saved. You, me, the corporal human being, the corporal spirit that is the individual that is us, we need to be saved. How we get saved is conjecture. How we comport ourselves is conjecture. As long as we comport ourselves within the accepted, agreed upon societal norms. So when you start going outside those norms, you start bucking the system starts bucking back. Try it. Screw with the government. Just try it and see how far it gets you. And as for most of these armchair wannabe Civil War enthusiasts, read between the lines there, friends. It ain't ever happening. Not in your lifetime anyway. And sure not under your circumstances. Y'all ain't got the brain power to pull it off. You would have done that at January 6th. You had the one chance, the one shot. Y'all fucked it up, blew it. But considering it's Trump, that's not a surprise. Not a surprise at all. Can we I am so ready to get past the insanity of this bullshit and get on to the next layer of insanity, because we will be dealing with right or wrong problems of this nature from this outcome for what's been going on the last 5 years for the next 50 years. I just hope to live long enough to see it finally work itself out. Just being practical here, I don't see it ending well if this guy gets reelected. And mostly because of the people that are pushing behind the scenes that we're not fully aware of. See, that's when I sit there and I say there is too a deep state in America. There is too a deep layer of people who deem it their duty or their desire to be in control, and the more control, the better off they have. And it's their belief that they understand how the best for the country and the direction the country should go better than anything or anybody else. You have several or many layers of this, quote, deep state. To say that there's some secret cabal, some Illuminati running the United States government behind the scenes is bullshit. That too is bullshit. There's no way. Our stuff is such a hot mess, and nobody's that damn clever to pull off a hot mess for as long as we have, to sit there and make that hardcore agreement that there's one super, secret body of whatever that's running stuff. We know that for a fact. Well, we don't know that for a fact, but I'm confident that that's the truth. What I believe, though, is a number of factions, deep-seated, deep state factions, who are hell-bent on having things their way. The Federalist Society, by definition, fits into that category, by the way, my friends. Yeah, if you just do some reading, casual reading on the Federalist Society and see how that goes and how you find what you think on that. Because they're just one of many on both sides of the political aisle. Where the money is, the money concentrates, power is brewing, and people craving power are congregating. It's just the way it has been forever. So this, buy and kill crap. Yeah, well, Mr. Hankey and Mr. Packer, Y'all ain't doing such a good job being buddies. You're not really that good of friends with Mr. Trump. I don't think so. I don't think so. Till next time, my friends. Y'all have a great weekend with what's left of it.
It just irritates me to no end.